All right, welcome everybody to another edition of Let's Do Well. This is the overall financial planning, financial wellness, education, brought to you by North Cottage. This one should be an easy one. This should be one of the more, I don't know, Craig, is fun or a word? Like more enjoyable, I guess, of all the presentations that we do. This is planning a dream vacation.
I think it's technically more funner.
More fun. Thank you. See, that's why I have it, right? More fun.
More
So,
funner.
so listen with this. This really applies to just about any vacation that you want to take. These are the same sort of thoughts, rules, and so on. But for us, we're gonna, if we're gonna go, we might as well go big. So let's go to that dream vacation spot. I'm sure everybody has one. Craig, what's yours? Where's your dream vacation?
I just did it 2 years ago. Did,
Okay, well that doesn't work then. You got to have another one. You got to have someplace else you want to go. You don't want
I
to go
have
to
to have
anywhere
it.
else in the world?
Yeah, I think I would love to. I've never done the Midwest, like Yellowstone, all that area,
Okay.
all the national parks. I have not done those. I'd love to do that.
Melanie, what about you? Unmute yourself for a second. Let us know where you want to go.
I would want to go back to the place I studied abroad, Budapest, Hungary, and just get to spend another month or so there.
Very nice. Very nice. For those out in the TV land, if you want to drop in the chat, tell us where your spot is, where you want to go. For me, it's really Italy. I've been a couple of times. My true want is to get to Sicily because my family is from Sicily. That's where our roots are. But honestly, if I was going to say what my dream would be I would be renting a villa in Tuscany for a month or more and just be hanging there in the vineyards. All
In
right,
the
let's get.
chat, wait, in the
Uh,
chat we have Fiji, also an Alaskan cruise or Ireland.
wow, very nice. I like that. There's a lot of different places. Fiji's another one of those. See, there you go, like Bali and all those places. See, you just start ticking the box off. Look at that.
Well, just give us ideas. I like ideas.
Yeah. For those of you, if you don't know us, real quick, we're here. This is brought to you by the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. My name is Tom Alessi. I am the president of the Aries Foundation. I have been in financial services for 27 years. I'm a certified fiduciary, unlike the folks on TV who tell you they're a fiduciary, which just means that anytime I'm sitting down and talking to someone, giving them guidance or advice, I can only bring up what is in your best interest, what I believe is in your best interest. You can ask me about anything, but I can only bring up what I think is in your best interest. Craig, if you could introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I'm
I was going
Craig
to ask you where you
Richardson.
wanted to go again, but I already got that.
Well, now I'm going to change my mind by then. So,
Oh, you can't change your
so
mind.
So I'm Craig Richardson. I'm the vice president of the Aries Foundation. I specialize in planning services, helping individuals and families have a better relationship with their money.
And we have Melanie on the call with us. Melanie, quick one, to just introduce yourself to the folks.
Hi everyone, I'm Melanie Krupa. I do the operations for Aries. I also do communications and keep these two on track.
Yes, she's the backbones to everything we do, keeps us on track, keeps us in line. All right, let's get started with this. So the idea here is the first part, this is an agenda, right, to think about what it is you're trying to do, right? So, these pieces sort of fall in place. Planning it's right to the heart of what we do and thinking about everything, but it's really starting early. So if you were trying to go someplace, Craig, we're really talking probably on a dream vacation, looking at 27, 28, more than likely, planning out that far in advance.
Well, possibly, right. Depends on your vacation and your goal. Absolutely.
Right. And then, like you said, that's the next part, right? So I want to be building that itinerary, thinking about the things I want to, like you just mentioned, going to the Midwest. Well, maybe I want to go to Yellowstone. Maybe I want to go to the Grand Tetons. Maybe I want to see this. I want to see that. You want to
Right.
make sure, all right, these are the things I want to sort of build into my trip as I'm thinking about building this whole thing out.
Hmm.
We're planners, so for us, it's always, well, what can go wrong, right? What are the problems that could happen? What are the variants that could come up? What are some of the things? And honestly, Craig, I think a lot of people when they do this, this is something they overlook.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on a lot of vacations. I've never had one that went perfectly smooth in every single area. There's always
Right.
something that comes up, whether it's a weather issue or a travel issue. You just got to learn to roll with the flow. That's all.
Yeah, the travel and whatever it is, that something happens and you got to sort of roll with it and figure it out. But if you've got that built in, a little bit of time, a little bit of play, something that you can do, you've got a way to flex as far as that and dealing with it.
Yeah, be able to alter your plans midstream and still see everything you want to see. And you're right. If you just build a little more flex time in, sometimes people make such a rigid agenda that as soon as one thing goes off, their whole
Right. It just spins it out
vacation
and you just,
skewed.
yeah.
Hmm.
And then for us, we don't like using that word budget, but in this case, it's really about planning in terms of this is what I plan on spending. And for that, that's really the focus, when you're dealing with some of this, especially when we're talking about, a dream vacation, what's this going to cost? And ultimately, what am I going to spend for not only getting there and doing things, but then all the other stuff that goes along with it?
Hmm.
Have a checklist. We're big believers in checklists, right? There's all sorts of, especially, Craig's talking about staying in this country. Everybody else, I think, except there was an Alaskan cruise, right, Melanie? That was one of the things that came up there, right?
Yep.
Okay, so everybody else was out of the country. The two people stayed in the country. The rest of us were getting out of the country. So, that brings on a whole different slew of, passports and money and currency exchange and everything else that goes on. And then medical care, right? That's another one that doesn't come up. And, some of us have experienced that or had family members who have experienced, hey, needing care overseas, and how are you going to deal with that?
Hmm.
And then lastly, Craig, I think what the most important thing is like you got to relax and enjoy it, right?
I don't know. Sometimes I need a vacation from my vacation. That,
Well, that's when you get a little crazy, all right? That's when you get a little overramped and a little trying to do too much. And
especially
I
when the
think
kids or family are involved, right?
yeah, then we get a little stressed in terms of the vacation. But I think that's the other part of it is I think, to understand, wait, I'm trying to be on vacation here. I don't need this to be this go, 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 go thing.
You say so. Mine's are more like National Lampoon, but that's okay.
All right, so planning ahead, this is what we talked about, right? Booking early, right? The earlier you book, the more likely you are going to be able to save, right? So the whole idea is, somebody who was trying to travel this summer, had you booked, 6, 8 months ago, the flight costs are going to be much less than somebody who's trying to go now. That's just part of what happens. So it's always, like we said, looking out to this is when I'm going to do this, and this is what I'm going to do. Flights are flights, but there are ways, Craig, to get better deals, especially if you're flexible with the timing when you're
Mhm.
traveling and the time you're traveling.
Yeah, and sometimes these fares change, day to day, right? So don't just say, "Well, I'm going to book it today," and that's it. Maybe look over the course of a week or so and see, what you can get for your best price. One of these things is making sure that you have travel in your budget, and know what you're willing to spend and what you're not willing to spend.
Right. And we're going to go through that in a slide or two where we'll talk, thinking about it from the big picture of what I should be spending on certain things and how much that should cost.
And the
And
other,
then bundles.
go ahead.
What is that
Hmm.
silly, what is that ad, right? Bundle and save? What is that? That's somebody's
Some
thing.
insurance company, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, somebody's thing, right? But that's the idea. Some of these whether it's Expedia or some of the other ones, they will give you discounts if you're bundling if you need a car or you need a hotel, to do it that way.
Yeah, not to give anybody a plug, but it's progressive.
Oh, okay. I thought it was Liberty Mutual.
Nope. It's not Liberty Bibbity. It's progressive.
Yeah, I thought that was Liberty Bibbity, bundle and
No,
save. The guy's trying to
no.
do the bundle and save ad.
Oh, well, they do. I guess they do it too, but so does Progressive. They do the bump. They did it
Well,
before.
everybody does. There we go. So we gave them enough of a plug. So
We've been busy.
But you can find deals. That's the whole idea of this. That if you know, all right, I'm going to be going someplace and I've got to find a hotel to stay at as part of that. I'm going to do the flight. I'm going to do the hotel. I'm going to get a car. I'm going to do it all in one package that might be cheaper than trying to find the pieces here and there and everywhere. And then if you're going and you want to be someplace and you want to make sure you're seeing the sights, whatever that might be, sometimes these tour packages, tour operators are part of that. And you can get discounts. And sometimes it makes it a little bit easier, Craig, right? Say, all right, I'm gonna go see, whatever, Yellowstone in your case, that it might be make sense to find somebody who's doing a sightseeing tour through Yellowstone versus you driving around and doing it.
Well, in my experience, I said my dream vacation was 2 years ago. We did Europe, did 6 different countries, and that was a whole package. We did all the everything was free. We didn't have to think about anything, which is
Right.
perfect. I didn't want to think about anything, but they also brought us to all the best places, which would have taken us forever to try to find. So
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes it's you get a better pricing and you have a better experience just because you have somebody who's done it before showing you the way.
Right. And taking you through. And sometimes it's those tours, depending on where you're going, that lines are a headache, but some
Oh
of them
yeah.
have the fast track through because of the
Mhm.
tour operators, so you're able to get through the door faster and get into whatever it is you're trying to see. So it's a way to think about it in terms of depending on what you're trying to do. If you're just trying to go to the beach and hang on the beach, that's a different conversation. You don't need a tour operator for that. But all right, we talked about that whole idea of what you're spending, right? And what it's costing you and going through it. And when you look at this, what you see is, really travel, especially if we're talking flying, especially if we're talking flying overseas, that travel is the biggest chunk of this. That's where most of it's going to get spent.
Tough
Followed
part's getting
closely.
there.
What?
The tough part is getting there.
The tough part is getting there, but then there's also staying. So you can see that flights and hotels, depending on where you're going,
Hmm.
become, it's over 50% of the package, basically.
Hmm.
Depending on where you're going, depending on where you're staying, what you're doing. But like I said, if we're talking about going overseas, and especially some of these exotic locales, that's where the money's going to go.
Right.
And then you look at it and you see food becomes the next thing. Because let's face it, for the most part, we're eating out, depending on what we're doing.
Yeah, right. And it depends on what you're doing and where you're staying. I mean, a lot of times, I've done vacations where we stayed in an Airbnb and because there's a big, bunch of us going. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's nice because then you can buy some groceries. You can have some meals at the house. You don't have to eat every single meal out.
Right.
You
It's a
can
way
take
to
special meals out.
correct. It's a way to stave off on that, shave it a little bit, save some money in terms of going through it. So, absolutely that's a way to do it. And then you can see, there's there's an emergency fund that's built in there.
Hmm.
It's about 5%, but that's something that's that flex, that's that again, I've got to have some backup, something because, like Craig said, inevitably something's going to go sideways on me on this trip, and I've got to have some thing set aside that I can deal with that.
Yeah, it always happens. Like someone's stuck somewhere, they got to take an Uber, or someone has an injury and they got to go to CVS or Walmart to pick up supplies, or it's always or something got left behind that you
Right,
forgot, but you got to replace it. So yeah, there's always going to be something that you're not expecting. So expect the unexpected.
right. And so it's just sort of having that in your mind to say, okay, as I'm building out my budget, as I'm building out what I'm going to spend on my dream vacation, I should have X amount just as a set aside fund just to cover that. And again, you can see it's about 5% in there. You
Hmm.
know, the 8% is built in for shopping, but that's an individual thing. God bless, depending on where you're going and, where you are in the world, what that could cost you and go through.
I think of my
Um,
family, it's that 30% chunk right there on the.
right. And then, so again, thinking of this from the big picture, like trying to figure out what it is you exactly want to do. Now, it's not build an itinerary like Craig mentioned earlier. Don't, not that rigid, like, oh, I got to do this, that whole thing, but just an idea of where do you want to go? What do you want to see that's important to you? there
Mhm.
are other stuff that you can go see if you have time, but if I'm going to France, I want to see the Mona Lisa. If I want to see the Eiffel Tower, the other stuff that's in there, okay, I can go figure that out. But those two things I want to see.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
The other thing too here is I like what you have in day one, keep it light. If you're traveling to, overseas, it could be a 5, 6, 7 hour time difference. So it's going to take you a little bit to go over that jet lag. So it's another reason why you want it. If you can have an extra day, it really does help uh, to get yourself, acclimated to the time difference.
Yeah, and then the other is apps, right? So on the pro tips there, it talks about apps. And everything is on an app nowadays. So, besides flights, because that mentions flights, but God bless, at this point, everything's on an app. So if the hotel booking, the trip booking, anything like that, just have it. One of the things it does say on there is to give you a screenshot, which
Hmm.
again, that's sort of a confirmation, like just in case there's some sort of confusion and you never know, you've got the screenshot that gives everything in terms of reservation numbers, that type of thing.
Yeah, another pro tip too, and especially traveling overseas, is take pictures of your license, your passport, any other travel things that you have, so you have a picture of it on your phone. Because if some reason you did get pickpocketed, which is a big issue in Europe, you have a backup on your ID.
Right,
And
right. In case something happens, again, you lose it, whether it's a pickpocket or you just left it someplace, and that can happen too.
either way, if you want to get back in this country, you're going to need your passport or some kind of
Yeah,
ID. So,
yes. As someone who has
assuming you
experienced
want to
that,
come back,
yes, yes.
you just live in the
Not,
airport.
not going to
Yes.
let you back into the country. We'll let you in the other country, but we won't let you back in. So, a pre-vacation checklist. Again, we're big on checklists, big on going through that. You're going to travel overseas. It's make sure that the passports are all up to date. Everything is all set. In today's, you got to have the new license if you're going to try to fly any place nowadays. So just making sure on that. Credit cards. A big one with that is letting them know that you are traveling.
Hmm.
So it's always,
Just
yeah,
want to let you know there's a question in the chat before we
okay.
move forward. Jane said, is there an advantage to using a travel agent or is it better to do your own research and bookings? And I'm going to take this question just because my roommate is a travel agent. Before we
Look at
got on,
free plugs to everybody today.
we were
God bless.
actually talking about how I drove my entire house, my roommates, and the baby to the airport last night because they're in Norway. I would suggest if time is valuable to you, if you think that your time is money or time is valuable, I would use a travel agent. They know what they're talking about. They know which hotels and excursions are better. They know all the pain points of tourists, like what spots you want to hit, which ones to avoid. Honestly, it's not more expensive to book through them. The majority, like they get paid on commission, similar to financial advisors as well. So I would say if you like doing the research, forego the travel agent. But if you really don't like doing the research, I would suggest using one because they have all that knowledge and they're taking that time back from you.
They may
There you
actually
go.
have some insider information too that you won't find in public, as
Right.
far as back tours and restaurants and deals and that kind of thing.
And
So
they'll also be more up to date on travel bans and certain restrictions. Like I know if something happens in a different country, my roommate's the first to hear about it because she has clients traveling there next month. So that's another thing to keep in mind.
great
That's a good
question. Yeah,
point.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, no, no, no. Really good question in terms of that. And sort of segues into the whole travel insurance thing.
Mhm.
So one of the things, especially when we're talking about this like a dream vacation, especially when we're planning out a year, possibly a year and a half out into the future, the concept there is I would suggest it because you don't know what's going to happen. You
Mhm.
don't know that, hey, I'm making this plan to travel, X time into the future, but I don't know I'm going to be able to travel at that point.
Right. Or you got sick, or someone in your party gets sick, or
Again, whether
something comes
whatever
up.
reason
Yeah.
that you can't go, that's something to do, something to think about. Electronics and the phone sort of connect those things together. I will tell you, if you're going to Europe, you've got to have the other plug. You've got to have the alternative plug because otherwise none of your stuff is going to charge. So you've got to be able to set for that. The phones, that's if you want to, have access to it. A lot of us nowadays, it's just simple. You can just change and just get that as far as a phone card or the universal SIM, international SIM card to change out.
Yeah. Is that what you meant by local currency? The charge, whether it's AC or DC, or are you talking about money?
Yeah, so well, local currency is, depending on where you're traveling, right? You got to do the foreign exchange. And foreign exchange, if you're doing foreign exchange, I don't recommend doing it. A lot of times we'll do it here. But as you travel, it's
Hmm.
not necessarily the best. You can check with your bank or your local banks to see what they might be offering as far as a rate. Don't do it at the airport because the airport's just going to jack you on that. You're better off served doing it at a local institution, a local bank in wherever you arrive. You're going to get the best rate there.
Yeah, it's always good to have a little bit of cash on you when you travel. Just
It
never
just
know.
makes sense sometimes to just say not a ton. I don't want a lot, but I want to do some. And if you're doing it at your local bank, a lot of times they're not going to jack you that much in terms of the currency exchange. And again,
Hmm.
like Craig said, just like flights, that's something that changes. So
Hmm.
you can just,
Change rates. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
you can watch the rates to see when coins are moving and where that exchange rate is to say maybe it makes sense for me to do it now. It's at a low number. The more than likely it's just going to be higher later in the year type of thing. And then confirmations are just making sure everything is all set.
Yep. Oh, did you do home security?
Home security, well,
Oh, you
yeah.
skipped home security, man. Backwards. Go back. That's kind of important, right?
It is important depending on how long you're going to be gone for, right?
Well, you're gone for a day. I think one big thing that people do on vacations is social media is so big, and you'll start posting pictures as soon as you arrive in your vacation spot. Well, all you did is let everybody know you're not home.
Right. And
So sometimes,
that's also true with the mail. Like if you're going to be gone longer than a week, I'd suggest putting your mail on hold.
hmm
Unless you have somebody that you know, whether it's a friend, a neighbor, a relative who's able to come to the house and just check on things, when you're gone, then they can bring the mail in. But if you don't have somebody who's going to check on the house, then I would suggest making sure that the mail is on hold if you're going to be gone longer than a week.
the other thing I did too, and it's super cheap to do, is I get timers for my lights, so they'll come on and off. That way,
Right.
people just they're not sure. Are they home? Not home? Who knows? So.
Yeah. No, and if you've got security cameras, obviously that's another thing. Or if you don't have them, to think about having those put in, or something along those lines. Because it is, Craig. That's what happens a lot of times with social media is you just start posting, and
Mhm.
it let somebody know. Like Melanie's crew is in Norway. They're in Norway now. They're not home.
I don't know. If someone robbed my house, I don't think I want to know till I get back.
Yeah,
I don't be in Italy watching it happen from the beach. Hey,
right.
put that TV down.
So we had mentioned about, stuff happens, stuff can change. And so that's another factor to be thinking about, the whole, again, trip insurance, the flights. Like flights have been changing left, right, and sideways nowadays. It's more of a common occurrence. As Melanie mentioned, her crew got delayed. That's what happens. And sometimes those delays, especially when you're dealing with international flights, one delay here triggers a whole slew of things happening down the line. And next thing you know, you're stuck in this way station that you were only supposed to be hanging out for an hour, but you missed the flight because of a previous delay, and now you're stuck. So that's something that definitely is worth looking into and just staying on top of. Medical emergencies, we talked about this. This is making sure that you've got coverage that's going to take care of you for emergency purposes wherever you are in the world. Most carriers will allow for some sort of emergency care procedure. If it gets more detailed than that, then usually you're kind of stuck sometimes. Weather disruptions, that depending on where you're going and what you're planning on doing. If, like Craig mentioned, if you're hanging on the beach, and it's tornado season or hurricane season or whatever it is, it may not be the best thing.
Well, unless I have a really good bar, we're
Yeah.
covered.
know there's something that's going on, right? So understand that can happen, that those are delays that can occur. And then, you know, not so much, it's more lost than stolen luggage. Like lost luggage, like that's if you've ever had to deal with it, it is a frantic thing to have to deal with. Um, that either they've lost the bag or it got put someplace, didn't make the flight or whatever it was. And as somebody who is a long time and an avid golfer, my golf clubs disappeared on a trip to
Oof.
a golfing vacation, which was just at the time almost heartbreaking and heart-wrenching. They found them finally, got them there the next day, and we were able to make the tee time. But when I landed and my clubs were not with everybody else's, I was absolutely freaking out at that point. You generally have to track it down. You got to go through the airline. There's a whole thing that goes there, and it's devastating to have to deal with, especially if it never arrives.
See, you didn't learn to go with the flow.
Yeah.
You're
Not
freaking
at
out.
that point. I was not in a go with the flow. I was in my absolute wait a minute, where are my clubs mode.
Yeah, the
Uh,
first thing I would have thought is, well, can I rent clubs? And of course you can at any golf course.
oh
So
yeah, I know, but it was they're my clubs.
I
I don't want
understand that. I'm
to.
just saying,
Had we been desperate, had they not shown up, yes, I would have rented clubs for the rest of
get
the
us back on track, Melanie, will you?
Funny story. No, I'm actually gonna side quest. When I studied abroad, first day I got there, my taxi driver stole my phone. So I didn't even get into my apartment yet.
Oh my
He
God.
just took off with my phone. And so I'm on the street frantic. Some locals give me a phone to try to call. Didn't work out. So I went the first 10 days on my studied abroad trip with no phone. I stuck by my roommate's side and basically just used like locals and walked around that way. So I was very unprepared for a backup in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it can happen. So it's, just understand again, these are a lot sort of fail safes and ideas. Lastly here is, it's meant to be relaxing. And there's a lot of stress building up to getting there and dealing with all of this and all these checklists and everything you're thinking about, but it's ultimately meant to be relaxing. Enjoy yourself. Melanie just mentioned the whole thing with the phone. Yeah, we're stuck to our phones. But, for some of this, it might be like, hey, I'm going to turn the phone off and I'm not going to look at it for the next 3 hours or whatever event I'm doing. If I'm going to a museum, maybe I'm keeping that in my pocket, but, you want to take photos, everybody does, but something that you're doing, right? I love to try the local cuisine. I have eaten, God bless stuff I've eaten on trips but I'm a big believer in that. And I think it's something, especially if you're going to somewhere, overseas, someplace exotic, to try the local stuff, to try, something new every day when you're away, because it just adds to it. You get more of that experience, Craig, I think.
Yeah, I mean, things that you can't do back home because that adds to your memory. And that's the biggest part is, we want to enjoy the trip. You also want to remember it, make good
Right.
memories.
Yeah, and the next one, because I love doing this, I don't love getting lost. Believe me, I do that enough on my own with it, but intentionally getting lost. The idea of just where you're someplace that's deemed at least safe, right? That you've researched and found to be safe, and then just wandered. All who wander are not lost.
We
So,
did this in Venice, which was great because you can't go too far. I mean, you could fall into the canal, but other than
right.
that, and it's as
Yeah.
if
No, I think it's a great experience. I think it's something great to do. You just wander for a while and just check out what's going on with the local area and just get lost in it and not really think about anything because that's what you're there for. It's vacation, you know. That photos, obviously, with phones, that's something there. And then, like Craig mentioned, that a lot of times if you've got tour operators, they're telling you other places you can go. That's another cool part of being on a tour or being part of a tour, that a lot of times they have other places that they recommend that you can check out that's not necessarily on some list someplace. So it's a nice way to sort of find those hidden gems, if you will.
yeah.
Write down one thing you loved each evening. I don't know about this, but that's one of those like, hey, I saw this someplace that said, sort of the gratefulness part, Craig. I always like being grateful for things and thinking about that to say, hey, this was the one cool thing I did today.
Yeah, I think the one thing that happens, especially on a vacation, it can be very hectic, right? And then before you know it, you start out the first day, you got a whole week ahead of you, and now you're at the last day going, what happened to it? I
Right.
think trying to be like in the moment, right? Even though you got to do a lot of things, you got to get to different places and do these different things, make sure you take a beat and just kind of be in the moment so you can remember it and enjoy it.
Yeah, of course. But if I'm on a beach vacation, then I'm just grateful that I just turned over. Like there was my whole day. I was like, that was my best day.
Well, you're in the moment all day. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're faking yourself, but yes.
So that was everything we had for the dream vacation. What we've got coming up. So some ones for you to be thinking about. So on August 4th, we're going to do Stop Wasting Money. This isn't more of a mandate. It's more of a, hey, there's things you're doing that you may not be aware of. We get caught up in stuff and we just repeat behaviors, even though it's costing us ultimately. In October, we're going to do dealing with financial stress. This is a big one for everybody, especially now with everything that's going on with the costs and everything that else is increasing. And then lastly, in December, end of the year out, we're going to do finding balance. And that's the trade-off where I'm trying to spend and live my life today, but I know I need to save for tomorrow.
All good
Uh,
topic.
yeah. One of the things we offer to everybody is an opportunity to meet with us, have a conversation. It's complimentary. There's no cost. It's just meant to be, hey, what's going on in your world? Where are you and your financial overview? And how can we help get you a little bit more calm in your financial well-being? Shoot
Even
the
if it's just
QR
planning a
code.
vacation.
For those of you who are watching this, the recording, pause the recording, take your phone out, shoot the QR code. It's going to open our calendar. The calendar link is right there as well. Feel free to schedule a time with us. That's why we're here. That's what we do. Any other questions? There were great questions in the chat box, but any other questions for us at this time?
Nothing in the chat box at the moment,
Okay.
other than Alyssa and Melanie dissing on us, but that's okay.
This one went like further out to the side way more than any other topic, seriously. So it made sense today.
Yeah, but it's meant to, right? Like I said, this is more one of the more fun topics that we have, and so we can get a little bit, sideways with that. But you can always check us out at ariesfoundation.org. Reach out to us, info@ariesfoundation.org, or that's the scheduler again. Somehow that came up. Yeah, it happens every now and then for me. All right, if that was that for everybody, listen, have a great rest of the day. Enjoy your time, and we'll see you in August.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
You're very welcome.